Okay, so today's video is going to be pretty easy and straightforward. We're just going to be making a bike light, more specifically the tail light. The headlight of the bike is actually really straightforward and easy. I'm just going to use 20 10mm white LEDs. That's about it for that. So we're going to be focusing on the tail light, which is this circuit right here. But before I get into it, let me explain my previous setup on my bike. It's a 16-speed road bike, and I ride it everywhere if I can, depending on the weather. And mainly I ride it to and from work, and I work second shift, so I leave work around 11 o'clock. So I really need a bike light, a tail light, and a headlight. I really need that because not only can I see with it, but people behind me driving can see me, and that's always important. My original setup was really easy, kind of not what I wanted at all, but it worked. It involved segments of an RGB LED strip I had on hand. I used a microcontroller to make the two front RGB LEDs, basically the headlights by controlling them to be white, and then the back tail light to flash red and blue. It worked, it did work, but it's not what I wanted, and overall it was inefficient because the battery died quite a bit because of the 12-volt booster I was using. It just didn't last as long as I would like it to. But it did work. My original intention though was to use the rotation of my bike or the movement of my feet or whatever to make the lights flash. And this is what this circuit is right here. I wanted to do this because I thought it would be pretty cool, and it turned out okay. I had to rework the circuit for the most part, but it does work. It turned out really good. So let me explain the schematic right here. In order to make the rotation of my bike to flash a light, we need something to control it. That's where a reed switch and a magnet comes in. Whenever the reed switch is close to the magnet, it closes. So that's what I'm going to be using to alternate the colors. So this is a circuit right here. This is a schematic that I have, and this is one that's on my breadboard right next to it. I'll show you in a second. Really simple. The reed switch is right here. It goes high to 5 volts. It's the voltage I'm going to be using, the power supply. And when it's open, it allows the PNP transistor to turn on because there's no voltage going to the base, so it turns on, which allows it to go high to voltage, also 5 volts, and the current flowing through it goes to an NPN transistor, which allows a red LED to blink, or a red LED to stay on rather. So this LED right here is on by default. Now when the reed switch closes, when the magnet's not near it, the reed switch closes. It allows voltage to go to the PNP, which turns it off because it's now high, and also allows voltage to go to a blue LED. Now, there's something about this circuit that kind of annoys me, and you might be able to guess it, you might not be able to guess it, but it does annoy me, and that pretty much is the fact that I had to use an NPN transistor after a PNP when I could just use the voltage to run the LED itself, but that did not work to its fullest potential. And when I was breadboarding it, it just would not light the LED to its fullest potential. It was very dim, so I had to use another transistor to pretty much turn it on. I don't know why. I didn't really have a lot of components on hand because I just went with off my order from Tata. I thought what I ordered was enough, but I probably could have figured it out if I had the right values or whatnot, but I made it work with what I had. Now this is the finalized circuit, really simple. Just a few components. Now my original intention was to pretty much make this, and this was what I thought the easiest in my head, but it just turned out not to be. It's pretty much the same setup as you can see. We have two transistors, one's an NPN and one's a PNP. The reed switch again goes to high, and then the LED goes to high, and then this PNP goes to high. Now this, in theory, was the idea I wanted to run with, but it just would not work on breadboard. Now I'll explain what I wanted it to do. Once the reed switch is open, it allowed the PNP transistor right here to go low, primarily because it's pull-down resistor, but I didn't really need the pull-down resistor, but it did help. So once the base of the PNP transistor went low, it will allow current to flow through it and turn on the LED right here. And then once the reed switch closed, it allowed voltage to go to the base, which would turn off this transistor, but then turn on the NPN transistor, which will allow the other LED to turn on. So once it closed, one would come on. Once it opened, one would come on. That's basic setup I wanted to run with. It's really what I wanted to happen, but it just would not work. So this circuit right here is pretty much just a stepped up version of it. When the reed switch is open, one LED turns on, the other one turns off. When it closes, the other LED turns on, the other one turns off. So it's really simple. This is the circuit I went with because it just worked the best. Unfortunately, I didn't really want to use two transistors. I was hoping just to get away with one, but wouldn't work. But it works. This version works anyways. So let's move over to the breadboard. Okay, so we're at my breadboard now. I have the 5 volts running to it. I'm just using my laptop as a power supply because I'm using a stripped USB cable for the power right now because it's the closest thing I have to a 5 volt power supply. And yeah, as you can see, the red LED is on by default, which is the LED that's coming from the PNP setup. Now when the reed switch closes, the blue LED should turn on. For the reed switch, we have this magnet right here. For my bike, I have a very strong magnet I'm going to be using. It's a neodymium magnet that I got from a hard drive, so I'm going to be using that instead of this one, because this one's really weak. But this is just for proof of concept. When the magnet comes close to it, the blue LED turns on. And then the red LED turns on once the reed switch is open again. So really simple circuit with a very awesome outcome. It had to be made the way I didn't want it to, but it works. One thing I've noticed about these reed switches though, I got this from Tada. They were kind of cheap, but they aren't the best quality. So what I ended up doing was I ended up not soldering, I don't know why I said soldering, but I ended up encasing a reed switch inside a hot glue capsule that I'm letting cool right now that I'll be using for the finalized product. The reason why I did that is because they are made out of the casing of them is glass, so very, very fragile, so that hopefully will extend its life by a little bit. So yeah, so right now we're just going to go move on to building this circuit on a PCB. Also got those from Tada. Ordered a lot more than I needed because I thought they were smaller, but oh well. So let's get that going. Okay, so I got the tail light all soldered up on the PCB. The one thing I actually forgot in the previous clip you just saw was I forgot to solder the blue LEDs to ground. So when I did a test off screen, I was kind of freaking out as to why they weren't working, but very easy fix and kind of stupid at my part, but it happens. I soldered up this reed switch temporarily. It's in place, you know, just for now. I mean, I'm going to extend the reed switch later when I finalize it on my bike. So right now we're going to do a test. Now, for this test, you gotta imagine I'm actually pedaling my bike and actually pedaling the crank, and on the crank will be a magnet mounted there. And whenever that magnet passes the reed switch, that's when the LEDs will alternate, which will give me a nice, you know, flashing visual from drivers behind me and whatnot, so they see me. So by default, the red light's on, so it kind of ties into a brake light as well, I guess, as long as I don't stop on the reed switch. This right here is a hard drive magnet. It's the biggest one I have right now. I have a smaller one that's actually out of the metal housing, but I'm using this for testing right now. So whenever I pedal the bike, the magnet will move past the reed switch, just like that, and give me a nice alternation between the two colors. So it's a really good visual, I think, and let's actually turn off the lights. Get a really good visual going. I mean, definitely at night you'll see this. And the flashing depends on how fast I pedal. So if I'm pedaling slow, it might just be like that. And if I'm pedaling fast, it might be really fast paced. But yeah, that's the general idea of it. And it's actually working really well. So now we're going to move on to the headlight portion. Okay, so here is my headlight for the front of my bike. I didn't do a video on this because it's really straightforward, so I didn't bother with that. But it is 10 millimeter LEDs I found on Tada for like 10 cents a piece, so I went, just ape shit on them. There's 20 of them wired up in parallel, so it's really, really bright, and all I need is one. I wanted to do like two side by side, but this is just perfect, so I'm not going to bother with that. Right here, you'll see 5 resistors. Very easy but kind of dirty way to get the right resistance. Since I'm using a 5-volt power supply for this, a little 5-volt USB battery backup thing, I can't power the LEDs just straight from that. I need resistance, and I only need about 30 ohms of resistance for this, but I couldn't find a 30 ohm resistor, and I definitely did not want to wait to order one, or did not want to go to Radio Shack and buy one. So what I did was I just took 5 resistors and wired them up in parallel. I got 4 150s and 1 100 ohm resistor. And in parallel that gives me about 27 ohms of resistance, I think, if I'm correct. Resistors in parallel are very different from resistors in series, so don't confuse that. But yeah, let's give it a test real fast. If I got the right resistor, I would much prefer it, but this works just as well. So let's fire it up. And probably turn off the lights. Yep, as you can see, it is really bright, and it throws the light just amazingly. I love it. So it's actually really, really bright, more power efficient than the setup I previously had, so that's good. So now all that's left to do is put everything in an enclosure and wire it up to the bike. I got this here for my battery, but I'm probably going to get a few more of these, one to house the headlight, and then one, like a small one, hopefully to house the tail light, because that one's really tiny and I don't want to overkill that one. But yeah, so that's really simple. So now we're just going to move on to the bike. Okay, so I have my bike on my bike hook right by my closet door in my workroom. And I have it this way so you can see everything a lot easier, and I can demonstrate it a lot easier too. I went ahead and wired everything up and ran all the connections, all that fun stuff off camera because it's just time consuming. But yeah, right here we have the headlight. I found this really nice wooden box that was like 60 cents. I bought it, and I'm planning on adding some like plexiglass or something over it to protect everything, and then maybe some stain for the wood later. But here is the headlight. We got the charge controller on-off switch and the lithium-ion battery that fits perfectly. Coming down from it, we have the cable right here. This just shares a power. This is just the power supply that goes to the tail light. It unplugs. I use this to reuse this connector I found, but it unplugs just if I have to do some maintenance on the bike or whatever. It's a lot easier to take apart. The headlight's only mounted by 2 zip ties. Got one right there and one right there. So that works out easily. And the cable comes all the way down to the tail light, which is in this wooden box. Kind of a lot bigger than I wanted it, but for now it works. I might, once I get some plexiglass, I might make my own little plexiglass box for it maybe, but for now this works. And right here is the wire that goes to the reed switch right over here. The reed switch, like I mentioned earlier, is pretty much in a case of hot glue that really protects it. I've been riding this thing for weeks, and it works amazingly still. On the crank, there is a magnet right over here that is being held on by glue, its own magnetic abilities, and some zip ties. So it's on there for a long period of time. So right now we're going to test it out. Let me just kill my desk light and then my workbench light. And we'll turn it on. Getting a little dark. Alright, there's the headlight. Still really bright. Down there you can see the red from the tail light. And right there is the red from the tail light. Now the crank, once the crank moves toward the magnet, which is kind of hard to do right now. Right now the magnet is right in front of the reed switch. So once the crank moves the magnet towards the reed switch, the tail light alternates to blue. And away is red and back is blue. So really awesome and really bright. And that pretty much wraps up this video. It was a really short video because I thought it was a fun project I'd share with you guys. But yeah, if you like it or you have any questions, comment below and subscribe if you want. I have a few more bike projects that I'll probably do in the future. Like, I do want to get rid of this battery and make it all power just by, using some magnets and some coils. Pretty much a little generator, but that's to come later. So if you like what you see or want to see more,
Be sure to subscribe, comment, and like. Thanks for watching.